It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-pointer attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1032 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday evening into Friday. And today's episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. 95 calories with its carbs, only worth it if you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the Ultra Moment segment coming up later in the episode. Today's show is going to be myself and Tyler Jones, friend of the podcast. Always a delight to talk to Tyler. And by the way, it's going to be a two-part episode. You're listening to part one right now, but part two should be accompanied very, very shortly after, if not already in your podcast feed. So keep that in mind. Part one and part two are recorded in order, and that is coming to you both at the same time. With that said, there is one piece of news to hit on at the top of this podcast. There's a couple more things to hit on the top of part two as well. But number one here is that Nate McMillan has now been officially announced as the Hawks head coach. No surprise there. That was always going to be coming at some point this week, and they finally announced that on Thursday afternoon. He will be the franchise's 14th full-time head coach after leading the Hawks to a 27-11 record and a 37-19 overall mark, including the playoffs, after he took over. Some nice statements in there from both Travis Schlenk and Nate McMillan. Travis said that he made an easy decision was part of the quote there, and I'm going to read the rest of that to you here. Quote, "We were able to see how gifted a tactician, motivator, and leader that he is firsthand, and the high level of respect and trust that he earned from our players made securing him as a head coach our top priority." So, obviously glowing stuff there from McMillan. No surprises whatsoever, and the Hawks at least announced on Instagram and on social media across the platforms that on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, there'll be an introductory press conference for McMillan. I know he's already been on the job for a while, but that's the official announcement. And I believe it's going to be streamed live on Twitter, according to the announcement from the Hawks. So if you want to watch that, that will be available for you to sort of dissect and go through and enjoy if you are a Hawks fan that is happy about the hire. So that was the big news on Thursday, even if it was already sort of advertised in advance from Travis Schlenk. But McMillan has coached, by the way, more than 1,200 NBA games, almost 1,300, and 71 postseason games across his 4 different stints with Seattle, Portland, Indiana, and Atlanta. So this is a guy who has a incredibly impressive background, and the Hawks are definitely happy to have him on board for the next several seasons. By the way, the Hawks do not announce terms. Adrian Wojnarowski did report, I should say, a few days ago that McMillan's deal is going to be for 4 years, but the Hawks have not confirmed that, nor have they announced it. I would trust Woj on that with regard to the duration, but there you go on that. That's all I know for now, and we'll get into much, much more on the Hawks momentarily with Howard Jones. But first, the Ultra Moment segment is here, brought to you by our friends at Michelob Ultra. And now the offseason is here, it won't be as easy. Have to be a little bit more creative to find the Ultra Moment of the week. But this one ended up pretty easy, honestly, because Travis Schlenk, and sort of keeping up the theme of this podcast so far, on Monday, he elected to reveal that Nate McMillan was going to be joining the team full-time on a call, unannounced, and just answered a question with basically just saying that it was going to be happening. And, of course, that was the assumption for a long time, given the success the Hawks have had, but it was definitely a moment when it happened. You know, as someone who was covering it, I was certainly in a flurry to tweet out the information and all that stuff, and, you know, Hawks fans reacted in real time as well. So McMillan will again have a 4-year deal, it seems, and his charge will be to keep this rolling after the team enjoyed that massive run. The expectations will be high at this point in time, but McMillan is definitely up for the challenge. He's been around for a very, very long time, and I know the fan base is thrilled to have him on board and locked in as the summer arrives. So obviously that was the moment of the week by a lot with regard to the information that the Hawks were sort of facilitating. And as the offseason arrives, we'll be talking about moments a lot. In fact, there are tons of other exciting Ultra moments to check out with the hashtag Ultra Moment. And at 95 calories with these carbs, it's only worth it if you enjoy it. Joy creates success, and enjoyment isn't the end game. it's the whole game. The Michelob Ultra moment this week goes to Travis Schlenk announcing the hire of Nate McMillan via the introductory press conference, postseason, etc., live on Zoom, and what a moment it was.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
I am joined now by the oft-requested guest, voice of the Hawks fan, Tyler Jones is here. Hello, sir.
Whew, man, I hope people like hearing my voice because
they do. Today's
been pretty bad, and it's not helped by the fact that I have yet to receive an invoice from Adam Silver, Brad.
I know. I know you're looking for like an embossed apology from the commissioner. Is that on its way? I mean, maybe it's not, but I haven't seen it yet.
What's he? So his Mickey Mouse ref trips Trae Young, ends the series right there. Because what? Like I guess we're gonna talk about the Bucks series, but like
we should.
What's there to talk about? Yeah. Like the series ended when Trae Young got hurt.
Okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate. They did win a game without him, and
yeah, but
I'm sure if any residual Bucks subscribers will listen to this podcast, they will point out undoubtedly that Giannis was not playing at the end of the series.
Yeah, but they still are a good defense without Giannis, and the Hawks aren't a good offense without Trae Young. So it's like
I would agree with both of those sentiments are true. I think.
I think it was a coin flip, but like you watched the game and they just couldn't grind out possessions on offense enough to keep up. And like the defense against the Bucks was the bigger story. The perimeter defenders just weren't good enough.
No, that was honest. If you want to find out the entire thing of the entire series,
the entire series boils down.
That might have been it.
Even before Trae Young got hurt, it was really the perimeter. Like people point in the paint problem that the Hawks had, but that was 100% because our perimeter defenders just weren't up to the caliber that they needed to be.
That is one of those stats where it gets blamed on, like my mentions, I'm sure they were similar for you. My mentions were full of people that were really mad at Capella and Collins, and it's like, well, yeah, maybe they could have been a little better, particularly Capella, but like if you watch the point of attack defense the whole series, it was problematic, we'll say.
Yeah, so it's just like just one. I mean, and it's also, it's relatively surprising, how well Herter and Bogey had played, defensively before the Bucks series. But, Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton were just different caliber of perimeter basketball players. And the Hawks, until Cam Reddish came back in game 4, like and Chris Dunn got an appearance. Like they couldn't stop either of those guys from getting anywhere they wanted to go on the floor. And it caused too much scrambling, which led to offensive rebounds, which led to easy points for the Bucks. And then on the other end, the Hawks, like it was a lot of post-ups, mismatched post-ups. And like, I don't know, to me, it just looked like John Collins particularly looked like he just got tired. Like, like to me, it didn't seem like he had the juice that he needed, that the Hawks needed from him. And also, again, the Bucks are, they're still a great defense, and you could really see, like, especially without Trae Young, just how harmful of an offensive player Clint Capella is, because it just makes everything harder, and they got really predictable, and it just wasn't good offensive basketball. Even though they did manage to scramble enough to get I think they were okay offensively, but like not to the level they needed to be with how bad their defense was.
Yeah, I agree, and it's really weird. And we'll get into a lot. People probably assume that if they listened to us before, but it's a complicated evaluation throughout the series, but Milwaukee's offense is not any great shakes. But as you alluded to earlier, like without Trey, the Hawks just could not generate the kind of offensive consistency. Like there were moments like Bogey getting up like 15 threes a game at the end of the series was very helpful. Like he played very well on offense, but they didn't have the creation. Lou had the one Lou game. They won. I mean, but you couldn't expect them to do that again necessarily, but that was the difference. Like obviously there were a lot of things built in there, but the game that Lou gave them, 70% of Trey, they were able to win. But when Lou didn't have it, they had no chance in that same spot. It wasn't just that simple.
Also Herter just struggling.
Yeah, I mean,
wasn't.
Honestly, like as good as he was in the Philly series, as good as he was at times even early in the Milwaukee series, Herter just didn't have it at the end of the series. I mean, it happens. I was frustrated by some of my mentions talking about like, really, really mad at Herter. It's like, yeah, he was not good at the end of the series. No question about it, but it's like people just forgot how good he was before the playoffs. Like he had a great playoffs. He just didn't have it at the end. And everyone's life is harder without Trey. I think
exactly. And
that makes some sense.
That's the biggest takeaway. It was like they were just they weren't getting the easy looks that Trey was generating. And so it's not like the looks they were generating from themselves were bad, but like they weren't like wide open, uncontested, or Kevin Herter taking a bad defender off the dribble, or, John Collins having actual space to work with because Trae Young has the floor spread out properly where Capella's not in his way. Like it was just you saw a lot of clunkiness, and Drew Holiday really took advantage. Drew and Chris really took advantage of just whoever Cam Reddish ultimately came down to. Whoever Cam Reddish isn't guarding, like that guy was just going to get to the middle of the paint, get to his spot, and get a good look, or like cause somebody to contest it, which would leave somebody open for an offensive rebound opportunity. And like, it was frustrating. It was frustrating because like it really felt like Game 3, Trae Young had figured something out where they couldn't stop him. And like he was getting anywhere he wanted to go. He had 35 points through 3 quarters. The Hawks were winning. The defense, like the defense just couldn't, like their defense just really could not come together consistently enough. Even if Trey was healthy, they probably don't win just because if Giannis doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean it's such a hard series to talk about because obviously this is a Hawks focus, but Milwaukee, as good as they were defensively at the end of the series, like they're not the same without Giannis either. So it's this impossible conversation to have because, if you tell me that Trey doesn't get hurt and Giannis does and misses the rest of the series, the Hawks probably win the series.
Then I think they have an easier time, in particular because Trae Young would have been able to take advantage of the switching that they were doing especially without Giannis on the floor.
Well, that was the thing. As soon as Giannis is out, they might have a base unit or two that can guard, but like as we saw in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, even with Giannis out there, like they can be attacked if it's not 100% Giannis. And if Giannis is just totally out, I think we saw they were more vulnerable. Like Brook Lopez was pretty awesome down the stretch of the series, I thought, from Milwaukee. But if it's full strength Trae Young and not the guy he was in the fourth quarter of Game 3 or the guy that came back in Game 6 and couldn't run at his full tempo, if that's the fully healthy, as you mentioned, 35 points, 3 quarters Trae Young, like it's just a different series at that point in time. That goes without saying. I'm not saying they definitely would have won.
I mean, honestly, it might have been a different series if Cam Reddish was fully healthy and been able to go, just because he was able to actually take advantage of mismatches, get to his spots.
And he was also the only guy that could bother Middleton. I mean, that's the other thing about that. The whole time, you and I talked about it a lot, dating back to when Hunter got hurt at the end of the Knicks series. Like, the fact that they won the Philly series without either of those guys.
It's the Philly series that really is the real shocker here.
Well, it is because, we talked about it for sure, but it almost gets glossed over. Like, it is really, really hard to believe, even though we watched it, that the Hawks could defend the way they were able to defend at times in those last 2 series without Hunter or Reddish. Now, I know Cam came back at the end, but it's a credit to Herter and Bogdanovich. It's a credit to the scheme, all that stuff. But like coming into think about this. Like go 3 months ago. If I tell you the Hawks have to try to play 2 top tier teams in the playoffs without Hunter or Reddish to defend, and I guess the Philly series, they didn't have that big wing to kill them, but Middleton like is not LeBron.
But guess who was killing them? Hold on, Brad. But guess who was killing them in the Philly series?
Seth Curry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Seth Curry's not some elite.
No, and they put Herter on him, and he was better. But
Kevin Herter did okay. Kevin Herter was the only good, but Kevin Herter was the only good defender.
And that's what I mean.
If anybody else guarded Seth Curry, he was going to get an open 3-pointer.
It was the same thing against Middleton. Bogey was like trying to be physical with him and at least getting contests, but Reddish and Hunter are on a different level defensively. Forget all the offensive stuff, but just talk about defense for a second. Like those 2 guys are, and everyone knows it, are the 2 big. I mean, that's why they drafted those guys, is you have to have those big wing defenders, and they're good. I mean, Hunter, especially on offense, is a guy who had a breakout this year. But when your only options are a pair of 2 guards in Herter and Bogdanovich, because those guys are 2 guards, that's what they are, or you have to go deeper into your bench, and the options are not good, like you're in a tough spot. And against Philly, they won the series, but if there was ever a team to play that's a really good team like Philadelphia without wings, it is Philadelphia, because they don't have wings either. So that made it a little bit easier. But we saw like when Middleton goes crazy, Cam was the only guy that was able to bother him, and it's tough. I mean, because honestly, it's amazing. I think you agree. It's amazing how well Cam was able to function after 4 months off. Like that's wild to me still.
Incredible.
Like the fact that the 3-point shooting is like what it is. Like he hit 6 threes in the game 6, which is crazy. But just the floor game stuff, like, and it's particularly just awareness and being able to be out there and function at that high level in the playoffs. Speed of the game stuff. That's what surprised me. Like the shooting stuff can just happen. You have a hot half or whatever, but his awareness and his ability to be out there, I'm still shocked by it. I mean, credit to him.
Well,
but, man,
I'm not, just because Cam Reddish is a high level talent.
He is, but it's
he's
4
also
months.
A hooper. Like he's a hooper though, Brad. Like it's just different with guys like him. Like it doesn't matter how far away from the game they are. As long as they're in shape, they're gonna bring their A game. And so, like, to me, it was really encouraging to see Cam Reddish be the best point guard on the team once Trey got hurt. So
I saw you tweeted that, or maybe you texted it to me, something like that, and I started laughing, and then I was like, well, it's not necessarily wrong. It's funny because we've talked about it, but Cam has had some issues as a ball handler and as a decision maker offensively at times. Let's just say. Yeah,
but Cam really benefited from the Bucks were not going to put their good defender.
No, and they shouldn't have, and it worked out very well for the Hawks.
And he absolutely took advantage, and that's like, if you want to go forward, that's the Hawks' strength, is that all their guys, you cannot put a bad defender. Like you can no longer put a bad defender on somebody like Kevin Herter.
No.
Like that's something he hadn't shown until this playoff.
Kevin Herter annihilated Seth Curry completely in that game. I mean, it was one game, but the whole series really, like he or Bryn Forbes or whoever you want to say, until the end of the Bucks series, if you put someone who couldn't guard him on him, he was going to take over, which is something to what you just said. He didn't do that before. Not that he couldn't, but we saw that sort of switch flip with him, and Bogey already had it. But Herter being aggressive that consistently, and obviously the coming out part was Game 7 against Philly, when he just literally was going to dominate. And he just decided, I'm going to score every time on Seth Curry, and he just did it over and over again. But I totally agree with you. Like, there's nowhere to hide a bad defender now, particularly in the backcourt. Like, yeah, Capella, you could hide a bad big man defender potentially, but everybody else, like, there's nowhere to just stick Bryn Forbes, like, or Jeff Teague.
Well, with Capella, the thing is, if you hide a bad,
he'll rebound.
But
yep.
that if we want to talk about disappointing stuff, though, is that
Capella's finishing? Is that coming right now? The bunnies?
No, I mean, it's whatever with the finishing.
No. Hold on. The one in I even tagged you on Twitter. The one where was that? I think it was Game 6 that he literally missed. He literally missed
Yeah.
a 1 foot, uncontested, just hit it off the. Was it the end of the quarter?
It was the end of the half.
End of the first half. That's what it was.
It was the end of the first half, yeah. And I'm like, man, he just gave away
Like
6 points.
literally, just thoughts and prayers for you was all I had in my head in that moment. I'm thinking about everything. I'm taking notes.
Bad.
I'm like, man, Tyler has got to be like on the floor right now, unable to function. After that miss.
No, at that point, I was watching Trae Young. I'm like, man, Trae cannot do. Trae trying to James Harden his way.
Honestly, kudos to him though, man. Like, listen, the fact that he was able to play 35 minutes or something.
He was competing on defense too. Like
he was leaving it out there. Like, I don't get mad anymore most of the time about takes. But, like, I was getting very mad at the faction of people that were like, oh, Trae's not tough because he's not playing in Game 5. I was, like,
what?
Getting bothered by that because, listen, if you know anything about Trae Young at all, like, love him or hate him, Trae Young will play. Trae Young will be out there. He hates missing games. He is tough as all get out for the guy, especially when you factor in his size. But even if you don't, the guy is tough as all get out. You think Trae Young wanted to miss Game 5? They probably had to tie him to a chair. Like,
man, he didn't want to miss Game 4. What are we talking about? He didn't want to miss any game.
No, and that's what I mean. Like, the fact that he played in Game 6, like, you saw. My thing is, he had 4 more days off, and you saw him in Game 6. Like, you could argue, you could argue he didn't even help him. I mean, this is not his fault, but you could argue that they might have been better off without him in Game 6.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that, but it's close.
More, if Cam Reddish was going to play more, but I mean, even still, like, just Trae Young's ability to
be guarded,
pass the ball,
be guarded and pass. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and be guarded, like, was an upgrade over. I mean, because, like, Lou did what he could, but
Lou's Game 4 was huge. I mean, Lou was a big reason why they won Game 4. He was awesome in Game 4, but you can't rely on more than that.
He's not really a point guard, and you can't really rely on him to run the offense. And so it's like, well, are we really gonna not have Trae out here? I mean, because at least Trae's a threat to shoot the ball from 35 feet, right? So.
And he's still one of the. I mean, I think he had 9 assists in the game. Like, he was still able to see. I mean, he couldn't get to everything that he wanted to off the dribble because he just didn't have the explosion. But yeah, it's. I just want to say it out loud because it really did bother me. Like, there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh, I can't believe he's not playing. He's not." I'm like, come on, man. Like, this is not the guy. I mean, maybe.
That's why I was off Twitter for the playoffs, man. Like, after a while, I had to get off. But I had to just get off that application because, like, and I already got a lot of people muted just because I don't want to see stuff like that. But, like, the idea that Trae's not tough, I'm like, and this is where I texted you this because you told me that some people were saying this. I was like, are these from the Hawks fans that just started, quote unquote Hawks fans that just started watching 2 weeks ago or a month ago?
I mean, it had to be just because, like, if you've been,
because, like, do y'all not know that Trae Young came back from a high ankle sprain
in a week?
In, like, what, a week?
Yeah, I mean,
a week.
When that happened,
that LeBron James was out for, like, what, 2 months?
I was gonna say when that ankle injury happened. By the way, that was this season. When that happened, like,
I thought the Hawks were done.
I thought he was gonna be out for weeks.
The season was over.
Yeah, I mean, not like totally done, but, like, given where they were at that point in time and how bad that looked, and as soon as you hear high ankle, that's not a 1 week injury usually, and the guy's back out there in whatever it was, like 8 days or something crazy like that. So, and the shoulder thing he's playing through in the next series and all that stuff.
Yeah, the shoulders. Oh, man, it's just a lot.
Anyway,
Trae was going through a lot, and, like, he played great basketball, so it's incredible. Shout out to Adam Silver and his boys.
There it is.
I guess they really wanted Giannis in the Bucks.
Oh, okay, hold on.
That chip.
Okay, I know you're kidding because there is no. But that actually made me insane. And this is not a Hawks thing, but, like, I can assure you that the NBA does not want
Adam
the Milwaukee
Silver loves
Bucks.
Mike Budenholzer.
Stop.
Adam Silver loves Mike Budenholzer. Adam Silver and Danny Ferry go way back.
This might be the first. This might be the first time in the history of
Danny Ferry
theories.
And Adam Silver go way back, Brad. This is how many times has Adam Silver tried to get Danny Ferry a job?
Oh, this is why I want you on the
multiple
podcast.
Times
This is why I need you here because I'm
just saying, like, Adam Silver was like, and he made the call. He was like, "Yo,
step on his ankle."
Budenholzer, like, he just doesn't know what to do with Trae Young. Like, he can't do nothing with him. Can you just help my boy Mike out? Like, they gonna fire him.
He can't do nothing
They're
with
gonna
him.
fire him for Rick Carlisle,
I'm
a
dying.
worse coach. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Oh, wow.
I'm
That was
sorry.
shots fired at Rick Carlisle. Interesting.
Rick,
strays on a
like
Wednesday night. That's nice.
Like Trill Withers says, man, Rick Carlisle tricked y'all. Okay, man hasn't gone out the first round in 10 years. He got Luka Doncic, and can't coach Luka. He got, come on now. Bo Harris was running his rotation.
That's Locked On Pacers now. It's Locked On Pacers now. We got to move on. No, I'm with you. I don't
know.
It's I don't know. We got a lot to get into. Before we get to the rest of this conversation, a word from our sponsors on today's show, and the first of which is RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models in the car or truck world, it's now impossible to stock all the parts that you need in a traditional chain storefront. Why would you endure often pointless questioning from someone at a storefront and have to wait while someone at the counter orders the parts on the computer, only choosing the brand that the warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to RockAuto.com right now, both at home and in your pocket. RockAuto.com is family business, serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for all the audio and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. They have everything you need from engine control modules and brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic car or your daily driver, get everything you need, just a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is uniquely and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your car and choose the brands, specs, and prices that you prefer. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or your truck, and from there you went right Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box to know that we sent you to them. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
This episode is brought to you by ESPN Plus. Dustin Poirier and Conor the Notorious McGregor will settle the score at UFC 264 on Saturday, July 10th, exclusively on ESPN Plus. After Conor McGregor defeated Poirier in 2014, Poirier evened the score in January, setting up the most highly anticipated rubber match in UFC history. UFC 264 is exclusively available to ESPN Plus subscribers for $69.99. Or sign up now to get UFC 264 and an ESPN Plus annual plan for $89.98. Visit espnplus.com/Spotify.
Before we get away from the Bucs series, is there anything else that you observed that's notable for the future? I mean, obviously we can litigate the whole thing all day long about what actually happened, but anything stick out to you other than what you said before about how the Hawks don't have any weaknesses offensively, which I definitely agree with, but anything else Collins stuff is going to be coming up, and that is a question that I get 100 times a day right now about Collins' contract and all that stuff. But anything else sticking out to you that you want to get to from that series before we move on?
I mean, I think one of the bigger things, John Collins he's got to become a better ball handler, right? Or just a more confident ball handler. Because it can't be the only way he takes advantage of a mismatch is post-ups or offensive rebounds. He's got to be able to do something off the dribble.
Man, he was great. He was great at the post though in that series.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. But
his shot making in that is very underrated. I think, not to cut you off, but his 12-footer over a mismatch is unguardable. He's just gotten so good at the touch in that mid-range area that most of the time that's a bad shot for guys, but it's not for him. He's good enough at it.
And to me, he's just in general a good enough shot maker in that respect, where he needs to start taking some shots off the dribble, not post ups, but just he'll do it every once in a while where somebody will set a screen, he'll get an open mid ranger and he'll just knock it down because he's money. But he's got to do that more. He's got to be a bit more aggressive in hunting his shots that way. Because to me, Brad, he's too good of a shooter to not be shooting more. And it doesn't have to be threes. To me, I'm at this point, the level of shooter that John is, if he just gets the shot up, he's got a good, it's just, he's just got incredible touch. But he's got to trust it. I don't know. To me, he just doesn't trust his handle. it's all right hand, which is fine against certain matchups. But you really saw in a couple post-up situations, the Bucks were really overplaying his right hand, and he's got to also find a way. And like the reason why I'm saying he's got to find ways to do stuff off the dribble, because that'll help him get to the free throw line. Because it's not like he's not getting fouled.
Yeah, I mean,
like it's not like he's not getting fouled, but like it's clear. It's just so much easier to draw fouls if you're facing up, dribbling, beating your guy, and then doing BS foul drawing to get going, because they really needed him offensively to be super explosive, and it's just, especially if he's going to be playing with Capella next year, like he's just got too many. Like, to me, I'm like, John is too good at too many things on offense to where he should be only getting like 7 shots a game, and that be a regularity in the playoffs. Like, that can't.
Yeah, it was stark. I mean, I'll be interested to see if it's used against him.
Yeah, it's
because like it was weird. I mean, I've had this discussion before, but the fact that he was regularly, 4th, 5th, 6th in shot attempts is like kind of strange, because I guess it's not in some respects. So it's on one level what you just said.
He's playing with Capella all the time, and he's playing with Capella all the time because
of the defense. Is what it is. I mean,
because of the defense, like they need those two together.
And the results were great. I mean,
on defense.
It's a two-sided thing, because as much as we all talked about the offensive fit of those guys, the defensive numbers with the two of them were good all year long. Like, it worked, obviously, but no one would argue that that's the perfect offensive pairing. It's just not. I mean, you're giving up a little bit offensively to get up the defense, and it worked, but they have to figure out a way. And I think you're right. I think it is on John on some level to have a more perimeter-oriented, like, off-the-dribble game that he doesn't really have.
I mean, the thing is, it's not going to come from Capella.
No, he's what he is. That's what it is.
And like it's really stark. Like, here's the reality: the best role man on the team is John Collins, and it's not even particularly close. And like, Clint Capella is a great role big man, and I think Okongwu can be, pretty good at that role as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, they have 3
John
like pretty real guys in that respect.
Yeah, but like, John is just better.
No,
like he just is.
He's one of the best in the league at it, if not the best. Like, he's a top 3 to 5
be the best role man in the NBA. But like, the Hawks couldn't use him in that way because Capella is there. So like,
you can't roll into Capella.
Hand, it's one of those things where it's like, well, if Okongwu, because like that's the thing. Like, if Capella were just a better passer, like, really that's really what's more limiting than Capella's inability to shoot is his inability to make
decisions.
A quick read.
He is one of the listen. And this is a very pro Capella podcast. I have raved about him all year long. He's a very bad passer.
The Hawks do not make the Eastern Conference Finals without Clint Capella. Let me
the
be
Hawks
clear.
don't, Hawks don't make the playoffs without Clint Capella.
Playoffs, yeah. They are not a good team without Clint Capella.
No,
but
in the regular season,
his
they
limitations
had to have him. Yes,
against the elite teams. You saw it against the Sixers, and you saw it a bit against the Knicks as well. But you saw offensively, you really saw all throughout the playoffs, just offensively, how limited he is. And then you compare that to what Okongwu is already able to do, just as a passer, not as a shooter,
he has better touch too. I mean,
a passer.
Capella's still better right now for obvious reasons, like overall. But you've seen the passing on the short roll, and also it's jarring. Not take Collins is a lead at this, so take him out of it. But even the touch between Okongwu and Capella from like 6 feet, like or 4 feet, like Okongwu doesn't miss bunnies. Even as a rookie, like he doesn't really miss those shots. Whereas Capella, we've been through it 100 times. He's just not a great touch guy. I mean, if he can dunk it, it's great. But his post-ups are hideous, which we all know. But even his offensive rebounding, like, he's so good at offensive rebounding that sometimes he gets his own rebounds and it makes it not matter as much. But he's just a bad finisher.
And then he doesn't pass the ball out, and it's like, what are you doing, man?
If he's not dunking, the finishing is just not particularly impressive, which is fine. I mean,
well, it comes and goes, right? Like, I mean, he had that 2-week stretch, Brad.
He still shoots well overall.
Interestingly enough, when Trae Young was out, when he was absolutely finishing everything, and like the hook shot was going, I don't know. I think his touch just comes and goes, and it's hopefully maybe he was battling some hand injury all year. Maybe he'll be able to use his right hand again, his actual dominant hand. Which
he also gets a this is true of a lot of guys. And I know the offseason is short this year, but he actually gets an offseason. Like last year, he didn't ever really have health. I mean, I know they all had that incredibly long offseason, but he was still hurt. Like he couldn't really do normal stuff. It was kind of like Cam the year before, where like he just didn't have an offseason. And Okongwu this year, same thing, by the way. Okongwu just was hurt and couldn't do anything for months. So having that development time, like the only injuries that are lingering out there right now are Hunter and Bogdanovich, and Hunter, is on track according to Schlenk, and we'll see on Bogey. But like,
well, we know Schlenk's track record on.
Well, yeah, I know, but
that, so.
But it is what it is on that. But I'm just saying, like, Capella is one of those guys that maybe will benefit from an actual offseason. Would be nice. I don't know. It's all things considered. I think that Collins.
It's tough because here's my thing, Brad. Like, because you could just really see the upside of a Okongwu front court, of what they can do on offense in particular, especially if, again, like Okongwu really doesn't need to be like it'd be okay if he made corner threes, but really he has to be able to make a move off the dribble, which I think he can do in that mid-range area when Collins is rolling to the rim. Like I really think the Hawks can do something with that for the future if they're going to bring back Collins, which...
Well, and all right, you know what? Hold on. Let's, on that note, let's put a pin in this. We're going to roll into part 2 of this podcast. So you and I are going to keep talking, but if you're listening to this podcast, subscribe, tell your friends, check out Tyler's stuff, and we'll be back for part 2 momentarily.